Good morning, everybody. We're going to start our TriMet briefing. We are absent a couple members today, and so what you see is what you've got. I was telling the staff jokingly, but I think I'm going to ask them to do this. Maybe we'll have a little pop quiz for the board of directors who are not here today, since they can now go online and see everything that was presented today. So we hope that they will take advantage of that service too. So, Mr. General Manager, your comments.
Board President, members of the board. Good morning. I do want to start off with just a few general comments. Most of our conversation this morning will be about the budget proposed. But what I wanted to just note is that we had incredibly strong ridership numbers for the month of February. Nearly 8.2 million trips were taken on TriMet in February. That's a significant boost. Overall weekly ridership was up 7.7%. And that's the largest monthly increase we've seen since 2008. And in 2008, and particularly in July of 2008, was when gas prices were spiking upwards. Needless to say, February of this year saw gas prices do something quite opposite of that. We're actually, just to sort of fill out some of these numbers, max gains were about 10.6%, on weekdays 11.5%, on weekends. Bus ridership was up 5.3% on weekdays and 9.9% on weekends. West ridership continued, as we have reported, was down a little from last year, which is down about 10%. But overall, incredibly strong ridership results. It's given that gas prices were down, that's sort of one side of it that is very interesting. So I can't tell you that we can explain all these numbers, but part of the explanation is also the change in weather. Clearly last February had an ice storm and a snowstorm and everything else associated with it, at least for a portion of the time, and we've had quite the opposite this year with banana belt style weather. So I think that has brought a lot more people out using the system, accessing various points in the region. So anyway, very good news though on ridership. I also wanted to just update you. You have previously approved contracting actions related to the electronic fare system construction. That work is actually going to be starting next Monday. And I wanted to just note to you and to obviously all of our constituents that there will be some construction activities underway around our platforms. Now recall that the way that we're doing this is that in our downtown area, we are actually closing the platforms in one area for about a week so that we can get in and get out fast and make sure that we avoid interruption. And that's in areas where there are nearby platforms that our customers can access. And then in outlying areas, we will not be closing the platform. We'll be keeping it open and continuing, again, a paced construction that all in all should complete itself through this whole sequence by about October of this year. So each of our stations will see that level of construction and ultimate improvement related to the e-fare polls, readers, and communication devices. So the first platform will be the Oak Street platform in downtown, and Civic and Gresham will be the first platforms that will undergo this additional construction work. We have done a great deal of outreach to all the local organizations and communicating to our riders. We'll continue to do that, obviously, between now and October as each of these stations come online for the construction effort. We've also established a tracking area on our website. TriMet.org/efare is the place where everybody can find updates to that construction over a period of time. So again, construction efforts, but all to the good of the e-fare system. I just want to let you know that was underway. Also underway at our platforms this last week, we've turned on a new technology, which is a partnership we have and a little bit of an experiment we have with Google. And these are what are called low-energy Bluetooth beacons that actually communicate with compatible cell phone devices when a person is on the platform, in the vicinity of the platform. And it will automatically allow a person to access real-time information, arrival departure information, as well as any service alerts that come up. It's an interesting technology, again, sort of in the theory of pushing information out to our customers using the kinds of technology that more and more people are carrying in their pocket every day. Again, this is really a pilot project with Google right now. No cost to TriMet of all of this. So we think it's very exciting technology that ultimately could also provide much better information to our customers wherever they are using the system. So we're very excited about that. Tim McHugh will, at the later part of the briefing agenda, give you an update on the plethora of smart city initiatives that we have underway, and this is really one of them. With that, I'll pause for any questions before we get into the budget. But any questions or comments?
Nope, I'll say mine too.
Yeah, I should know the answer, but I don't. Any unintended consequences where you open up platform this station and that could affect the station down? You know, you shut this one down, you're working on it, and then something pops up, shuts down the other station. So
I would never say never, but I would also say that our construction planning has really been done with the notion of minimizing any of that.
Right.
And I think the key in all of that to really make that go smoothly is communication and signage and other ways to communicate with the riders to minimize that.
And we would.
And again, the only place we're closing platforms will be downtown, where there's pretty close proximity of platforms.
Okay.
Well, I guess,
Do we have buses on standby or something, just in case? You know how we lost that piece of switchgear over there by the Lloyd Center?
Yeah, this
Part wore
work
out. And
is not really affecting the trackway.
Okay.
So it really is confined to the platform. So I would think that we always have buses on standby, and we always have the ability to do a bus bridge, but to do anything extraordinary, I think, would be over preparing for something that's very unlikely at this point.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Please move forward. Budget obviously is the priority, I think, for us.
The key thing, and I'd like to invite Dan Blocker and Dee Brookshire, Dan, our executive for capital, and Dee, of course, our CFO, to be up here in the position to answer the kinds of questions that you might have that I might not personally have answers for. But again, this is an important meeting for us in that it is our kickoff for our public review of our fiscal year 16 budget. And we have a number of, I think, very important initiatives associated with this budget release. And we'll go through a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation here, but again, wanted to respond to any questions and comments that you might have. We'll go through the schedule again for the budget, but overall, this kicks off our public review. We'll also be submitting it after your approval to do so to the TSCC for review. Again, adoption is now scheduled for essentially your business meeting in May. So we have some time to review all the details and make sure that we've got everything aligned the way we should. But let's talk first about where we stand from a revenue and cost standpoint. And it's a very favorable outcome right now compared to where we have been now coming out of the Great Recession. We see strong payroll tax growth. And again, we're relying on forecasts that were prepared independently for us by Eco Northwest. And they're projecting strong payroll tax growth, not only for this upcoming fiscal year 16, which again is July 1, 2015 to June 30th, 2016. And that's really, again, a very key parameter in our budget. It is the largest revenue source, our payroll tax accounting for, in this budget, my understanding is about 54% of the overall revenue that we see. Right now, and I just returned from a trip to DC, we are projecting that federal preventative maintenance funds will be continue to forward to us at current levels. As you know, there is a need for a new federal authorization, and the associated funding with that. It remains a challenge for Congress, but there is a lot of energy being put into that whole topic. So our assumption going into the budget is flat. Fare revenue is stable, grows with the increase in service and the increase in ridership. We'll go into exactly what we're projecting for individual fare increases, but just the headline is no major adult fare increase associated with this budget in the current proposal. And again, where we really are with this is that because of our new labor contract and the guidelines of the strategic financial plan, I think we can come to you with a very solid, financially sustainable funding plan here that will actually do a great deal of good for our riders in our region overall. I would just note, and we'll continue to talk to you about this, but the budget as presented is consistent with the board's fund balance policies as outlined in the strategic financial plan. It's consistent with your pension funding guidelines, and it's also consistent with your debt policy guidelines that you've established. We, as putting together the budget and making the kinds of priority decisions that are always associated with it, have 4 priorities. These are in no particular order, but first of all is to open the Max Orange Line safely and successfully. That is the big initiative this year. No question that our construction teams have done a terrific job of preparing an alignment for us. We now need to complete safety certification and other efforts. We will also be expanding service and improving the system elsewhere. And I'll go through where some of those are, but clearly you've been briefed on the bus service plan associated with the Orange Line opening. There will be a major increase of service in North Clackamas County in particular associated with that. We have a few details to follow on that as well. Clearly important to us and continues to be a major emphasis of the board in all of our conversations is the advancement of a culture of safety at TriMet, and we have a number of initiatives underway in that regard too. And then finally demonstrating good financial stewardship so that we can make sure that the service that we put on the street can be maintained, can be improved, and can do in a very sustainable way. So the highlights of the budget, the operating budget is $505 million. There's about a $122 million capital budget. Dan will walk through some of the pieces of that in a later part of the presentation. And then we have about $229 million in light rail programs, which are primarily the wrap-up of the Orange Line work. Moving on, as you know, the Orange Line is on time, it's on budget. We'll see a number of milestones as we approach the opening, scheduled for September 12th. Key amongst that, and you've been briefed on this in some level of detail, is the safety certification effort, where there are literally thousands of individual items that are being checked and double-checked and certified that they have been completed to make sure that it's a safe alignment for our customers and our staff. We are continuing our staff up for all the personnel necessary to run quality service. But one of the major things that is sort of not always understood about this is that we are running light rail, buses, and streetcar, which means every person involved in the operations of any of those systems will need to have a training session associated with the protocols of operating safely on the bridge. So that program actually with bus operators is starting later this month. So we'll continue. That will be a major effort between now and September. Just to sort of note, the Orange Line, this budget sees about an $8.5 million new investment in service. There's 7.3 miles, 10 new stations, but what I think now we're beginning to focus on are the schedules and the service, and what we'll see is frequent service levels on the Orange Line, 15-minute all-day service, 10 minutes in the rush hour. And then we'll obviously respond to passenger demand as future, as the demand and ridership continues to grow. Serves, as you well know, a number of really key destinations and connects a number of other key transportation facilities in the region. And just to note, the bus service plan that you've been briefed on will actually show 2 bus lines also using the Telecom Crossing Bridge and the Transit Way. It runs from Southeast 8th all the way up here to First and Nato, is the line 17 and line 9. So we'll see quite a bit of bus service on the bridge as well. The other piece of this that sometimes gets overlooked is that the streetcar will also see a major increase in service with the opening of the bridge, which will actually allow the full CL line to loop around downtown. And that will actually show some major improvements in service between here and South Waterfront, for example, and consistent improved, really doubled up service on 10th and 11th through the west side of downtown. So some very significant major improvements in streetcar service as that loop is established as well. And again, our funding share for that is included in the budget, but also just to note that there is partnership dollars from the City of Portland associated with that operation as well. Just relating to the bus, we have again done a very very long process of working with our constituents and our riders and our neighbors in the North Clackamas County area and Southeast Portland related to the bus service plan. And I think we've got a very fine plan that is a substantial improvement in bus service. That's all included in this budget as well. And I think we'll see a lot of benefits to mobility within particularly North Clackamas County that go beyond the MAX system. For example, much more frequent service between Milwaukee and the Clackamas Town Center that will actually provide many better connections for residents of North Clackamas County and indeed Southeast Portland. One of the lines that's proposed is actually will restore service across the Selwood Bridge. As soon as we get to the point where we can do that, we may have a short detour for a few months as that bridge continues its construction effort. But nonetheless, the ultimate plan is to provide service on Tacoma, which provides actually a one-seat ride from Oregon City to the Selwood area, and then up through McAdam to the South Waterfront area and downtown. I'd also note, just in addition to the Orange Line, there are a number of other service investments that are proposed in this budget. This includes another $1.1 million in rail frequent service restoration and $2.5 million in bus improvements. That includes completing the restoration of frequent service and service enhancements, capacity improvements, if you will, that are needed throughout the bus system. We also have about $730,000 in bus reliability improvements. That's adjusting the schedules to really accommodate both passenger loads as well as added congestion. So I think what I'd like to emphasize at that is that at this point, if this budget is approved, we will have the frequent service fully restored to pre-recession levels. Both bus and, which has been the priority, as well as MAX, as well as adding this new increment of service associated with the Orange Line. I would also say that there's always more we can do related to schedule reliability, but we obviously, with any budget, you have to make some choices, and we've got some very big service improvements here. And my hope is that as we begin to adjust the loads, we can begin to see how these service changes affect the system overall and begin to make some adjustments from there over the next year as well. Yes.
Question, Neil. Do you have any idea what the population growth has been since '08 in the Tri-County area?
Offhand, I don't, but I know we can find
I
that.
mean, just, reliability, increased service. So
Yes, yes.
Just curious.
I did note that again, these all fall under this sort of general priority of expanding service and improving system reliability, but we have a number of other capital improvements, and Dan can go through some of these in more detail if you'd like. But this budget continues the renewal of our bus fleet. It proposes 77 new buses to be purchased in 2016. That would bring, since we began this program, us up to a total of 326. And in this new fiscal year, we would actually hit our target of having our average age of our bus fleet at 8. So this is a major milestone for us to actually achieve this. Needless to say, that also means all low floor, all air conditioned. So great levels of improvement, I think, for our customers. Continue our lift vehicle replacement as needed. And we have a number of operating facility improvements that are both underway and beginning to be planned that are supported by this budget overall. One of the other areas that sometimes doesn't get noted is that we are in the midst of a MAX midlife overhaul for all of our first Type 1 vehicles, but now also beginning our Type 2 vehicles, the first low-floor cars. And so that program continues apace as well. Just continuing on that, we also have a number of MAX system improvements proposed in the capital budget. Might call out in particular the Hollywood and Washington Park platform and station finishes, two very popular, heavily used stations that have had some wear and tear. I mentioned earlier the construction of the e-fare system, but again, the budget continues the funding of both the electronic side as well as the physical side of the electronic fare system. And again, in this budget year, we'll complete the work at all of our 87 stations. But again, just to note that the continued ramp up toward electronic fare comes to about a 2017 launch of that. A number of other improvements underway. Elevator refurbishment. We are trying to get ahead of that. And again, some of our elevators have been around a while and need reconstruction and refurbishment. So we do begin a program of that in this fiscal year. We have a number of other ongoing improvements, such as the communications retrofit of our MAX cars, which will provide electronic signage boards on all MAX vehicles. GPS trackers for the MAX system, and that's tied in with some other guidance improvements that we want to make for the MAX operators, and more customer information displays. I'd also note that we have a number of projects along the Blue Line, which are really in the category of track repair and replacement efforts and improving switches and signals at key points. One of those is going to be at Rose Quarter, particularly just east of the current Rose Quarter platform, where those switches are due for replacement. So with that, I'd also wanted to move to another one of the priorities, which is advancing a culture of safety. I think we're into about the fourth year. We are starting we're continuing operator recertification efforts related to our safety program. In particular, we are beginning the training associated with the safety management system, which is essentially continuous improvement efforts, engaging all of the frontline workforce in suggestions and ideas about how to make the workplace and our service safer. And so, again, we have developed the system that helps support that, but it's the final pieces in place is really the training of really everyone at TriMet associated with that. We've begun that with executives and directors, and we're now marching through the organization, making sure that that will ultimately hit each and every one of us. We have a number of pedestrian crossings that will continue to improve. When you begin to see the sorts of development that are currently occurring around our Holiday Street alignment in the Lloyd Center area, Orenco in Washington County, many other places, you begin to see land use and passenger flow begins to change over time. And so we do need to change the system to make sure that we have the best sorts of pedestrian improvements we can in those areas. So those are funded as well. We're now in the second year of a 5-year program to replace all of our analog CCTV cameras with digital cameras, which allow a better manipulation of and storage and retrieval of the data and higher quality resolution. So again, continuing that program. And we are, this year, will be completing the Federal Railroad Administration requirements to install positive train control for the West system. And then funding for that effort is also included in the budget. I would say that we're one of the few commuter rail operators who are actually meeting the deadline of the end of this calendar year to achieve that. There's very likely to be some legislative relief proposed in Congress. It actually has been proposed in Congress and will likely need to be approved because for other systems it's been a real struggle to achieve that outcome. But we'll have that in place by the end of this calendar year.
Are we getting a good pool of applicants for operators?
Yes.
And the expansion of the workforce?
We are. Just a quick update on that. I had a little worry in the back of my mind because our input to the system, the pipeline, if you will, seemed to dip a bit in December and January. But pleased to tell you that as following that, it has picked up and we are continuing to get very high quality applicants starting in February. But I think, as we all know, the job market is tightening and will be in probably more competitive situation than we have been in the past. So we're watching that closely. But so far, so good. The other thing I would note is that we have in the new labor contract the ability to bring apprentice inputs directly from community college programs or other areas rather than having to promote entirely from within our service worker category. And we have those programs really underway right now. We have been trying to do some direct recruitment, but what we recognize is we need to really develop pipelines on that. So probably more than you wanted to know, but we're underway with that.
I got a pitch for you. Every year, either we host what they call Women in Trades.
Yes.
To get women starting at middle school, high school, etc., exposed to, not just to trades, but, other things. So I'm not sure if we have a booth there, but probably wouldn't be a bad place to do it.
We'll follow up.
Yes.
Sounds like an excellent idea.
I think so.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
Yep.
follow in that. I was going to wait, but since Director Esmond brought it up, as we're doing the training and we're doing the hiring, and I know in the last several months we've been bringing in some new crews being trained for operators, is anyone watching the numbers?
Yes.
And how are our numbers and what are we doing to ensure that as we move forward to the operators and those who are being trained to operate the trains and all of that, that not only are we hiring and we are training, but we are increasing our numbers of persons who are persons of color. Not tokenism, but we are increasing with intentionality.
So I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I can tell you that the diversity of our input have been, into our operator ranks has been really terrific, and we'll provide the specific numbers to you right as well. I would also say that one of the when I sort of mentioned the pipeline into the apprentice programs, one of our goals related to that is particularly to bring women and people of color into those ranks at increasing numbers. And so we recognize, too, that's not a switch we can turn on and off. We really do need to do a great deal of work in the community to make sure people are aware of the opportunities that we offer. And we'll need a lot of partners to do that. So we are underway with that effort. Just to note some other key financial considerations, I mentioned no base fare increase is proposed. So I think that's good news for our riders. I will be, however, coming to the board with a recommendation that we increase our honored citizen fare, really return it to where historically that fare has been, which is 1/2 of the adult fare. You might remember the history of this, which is that we agreed with our CAT committee and other constituencies to freeze the honored citizen fare at the outset of the recession when other fare categories were going up. And that was because we were phasing in an increase on the lift fare. And so as we did that phase in, which has been completed now, we froze the honored citizen fare. It feels to me like this is now an appropriate time to bring it back to it where it has been historically. That would also align the honored citizen fare with our current youth fare, which is $1.25 and a $28 monthly pass. And that would create one discount fare category, which simplifies the fare system, I think, for everyone, which is a desirable thing. But I think fundamentally it's simply time to bring it back to historical levels. And then that would be in line with the policies and direction that you've provided at your retreats and other conversation about this, which aligns it half the adult fare, and then that could be maintained as fare increases are considered in the future. So we also understand that this may require an increase in some of the fare mitigation activities that we have underway, and are prepared to fund that as well. The current level of the fare mitigation program is about 1.3 million, and so, but just to note that we don't really have that specifically budgeted. It is a reduction in fare revenue that we see. So there is some flexibility in our ability to meet needs as they come to us. The other thing I would just note is that we're continuing to pay down the pension obligations, and we're at, frankly, much better levels of conformance with our funding requirements, and continuing to sort of advance that on an accelerated schedule. And so that acceleration of pension funding continues in this budget cycle. Regarding wages, needless to say, we budgeted the union contract agreement, which is a 3% increase. And then we're proposing the same for non-union employees moving forward. Regarding debt service, there would be a new issue. We will obviously come to the board with a full briefing about any new debt, given that that would be a separate action on your part. But from the budget standpoint, we've included a new issue of $80 million. That is, some of that is refinancing existing debt, and so we'll be able to sort of walk through all of that when we actually have that debt service presentation to you, or resolution in front of you. Diesel fuel is a question I get a lot. We have reduced the budget for diesel fuel. We're now budgeting at about $3.15 per gallon. If I recall, the last time I looked at the pricing, it was about $3.06, so just a little above where it is right now. But where it goes, frankly, who knows? It's always a bit of a guess as we move forward.
You know that, Mr. General Manager?
Yes.
The reserves, when we do not expend, the monthly part is still being set aside.
It's being
In
tracked,
case.
yes. And just to know, it's not a separate account, but it is being tracked, so we do know that. Yep.
Okay.
And key budget dates ahead. This is, I think, what I was alluding to. Again, this is our kickoff of really the review of the budget, the consideration of the budget. We would ask at your next meeting to approve the submittal of the draft budget to the TSCC for their comments and review. Those reviews would come to you from the TSCC and its members at April 22nd, when there is a hearing with TSCC. And your board hearing and budget adoption is also scheduled for the April and May meetings. And again, any fare increase and the service ordinance would be a two-step process where it's introduced in April with public hearing and then proposed for adoption in May. And again, the budget would begin on July 1st. So with that, I pause for any questions. Mr. Blocker will go through a little bit on the capital side. I would also note that we're setting up website to accept and review comments at trimet.org/budget. And so we'll always be taking comments by email, phone, and snail mail. And we'll certainly respond and provide those comments to you at future board meetings as they come in.
Before you go to,
Please, I was just going to ask for questions.
yes. You have on here May 25th budget adopted?
Yes.
Unless I'm looking at the wrong calendar, that might be a Monday.
It's the 27th.
Thank you for the edit.
Okay, so I was just checking all of my dates and said I don't have that one down. Okay.
Way to check, way to check.
All right,
Appreciate that.
we're in good shape now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate that.
I guess I just want to say, I mean, since Director Stovall and Director Prosser are not here, I think one of the things they were looking for is making sure that the board, when they look at what we've got in front of you today, we have the priorities that the board has expressed incorporated into the budget. And if we're missing something, I think we need to get that out, because you can see it's going to accelerate rather quickly in terms of the budget schedule. So if we're missing anything, now's the time that they really kind of get it out and ask staff to maybe do some further evaluation or massaging of the budget to address those. I would say what I've seen, you've done a great job of addressing the board's priorities. And so I think with this presentation, I'll give us more. I just want to set that context. I'm going to ask you if we're missing anything before we leave today.
Okay, I think priorities are there, but there are some questions that I have internal to things happening in the budget. It's good to see that the mitigation is going to be maintained. But also one of the great things that we were facing this year is how we fund the extra transfer part. And I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know where it's, in the document, but would like to know where that's at before I move forward to say that I'm ready to go through all of this. Those are the questions that are there about that. The student pass program, are we still going to be in a collaboration with the county, the city, school board to do that? Though I know it's a reduction in fares, but if I have $5 million and I take $1 million away to reduce, that means I have $4 million to operate with. I don't have $5 million, we got $4 million. So I do have some questions about that. Then in terms of things that happen with internal staffing, and I've mentioned this to the general manager also in terms of that, now that PMLR is coming to a close. And that has been one of the projects that has just really kept our numbers up of DBE, participation, and all of that. What are we going to do for that? But more importantly, tell me where we are in comparison to where our diversity office is today inside of TriMet in comparison to other agencies outside. What is their diversity, and how in this 2016 budget, 15-16 budget, are we going to take care of that office to be fully staffed? My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that part of this is coming from PMLR funds. PMLR funds are beginning to wrap up because we got to wrap up on budget on time. I need to know where the dollars are and that those dollars are going to be there to take care of that without, chopping it down, saying we don't, that and this has to go and this one has to go, and we get a more limited one than we have. Title VI evaluations are requiring more and more, and will require more and more as we move forward based on some things and changes that have occurred. I just want to have a level of comfort that we are doing these things and they've been addressed in the budget in those details.
Thank you.
So if I might address a couple of those that I can note currently where we are. First of all, the extra transfer half hour is included, the reduction in fare revenue that we see from that, which I think was estimated at $1.7 million, right, Dee? Has been accommodated within the budget numbers that you see. So in other words, we reduced fare revenue over what it would have been by $1.7 million to accommodate that.
So it's a $3 million reduction in fares now.
1.7.
1.76.
Okay.
Okay, 1.76 plus 1.3.
Well, the mitigation program continues. We did not use that to offset the 1.76.
But you-
No, right, you didn't offset it.
Correct.
But if I add it together, does that give me a $3 million
Yes.
reduction?
Yes,
Yes.
it does.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
And that is included.
Yeah.
All right, so we're 3.76
Yeah.
reduced at this point before we add the school pass part.
Approximately, just a little over 3 million for that, and the PASS program is also included. That continues at the same level.
Right. Now, our assumption remains, and again, we have to sort of wait for the budget processes at the city and the school district, which are our two partners on the PASS program, but we budgeted our part, which is roughly $1 million for the student PASS program. Again, we have to sort of wait and see where our partners are on that, but we've accommodated that in the budget. We can certainly give you much more information about the DBE level and the diversity office. I would tell you that one of the major challenges we did have with this budget was the dilemma that you just mentioned, Dr. Bethel, which is a number of staff who have been dedicated to the Portland-Milwaukee project are now less dedicated as we move through this year to the Portland-Milwaukee project. But important activities like Title VI and the DBE program that need to be maintained. So I believe that we are in good shape there in terms of maintaining our efforts and level, but we'll give you the specifics in response. Particularly, I would note that the volume of DBE contracting activity will be going down. There's no question about it because we simply don't have the volume of contracting work. That said, what we wanted to do is really make sure that the projects that we do advance maintain our core value related to diversity and DBE participation. So as we do our own work, whether that be track replacement work or facility improvement work, we want to make sure that we keep our commitment to diversity in the disadvantaged business community as we move forward. And I think one of the reasons for the review of the budget, the capital budget that Dan will talk about, was specifically to make sure that we carry forward those best practices that we've seen on the project and move them into other areas of the agency's work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Board President and members of the board. I'm here today to just give you a little bit further detail about this year's capital plan. We made some changes to the way the plan was processed this year. I wanted to share those with you and then give you some of the highlights of the results that are included in this proposed budget. The capital plan is one of the inputs into the overall budget, and for the most part it's done in parallel with the budget preparation time frame. We start with a rolling 5-year capital plan. A committee then assesses all the projects that are submitted for the plan, both revisions and carry forward of ongoing activities as well as newly proposed projects. This year there were over 130 items that came from all aspects of the organization to be assessed for whether they could be included in this year's budget. Now, what's different this year, we established a different committee structure this year. In the past, the capital work was done at a staff level, and decisions were made that sometimes weren't always in complete alignment with the higher level budget goals. So we revamped the committee this year to actually have the committee composed of the executive directors. And that way, all the executive directors would be in the conversation examining which projects would proceed, which ones would not proceed, which ones might be extended into the future somewhat, again, to balance our very limited resources and our very significant needs for all this work. So we raised it up to the executive level, and our Deputy GM, Bob Nelson, is the chair of the committee this year. And then we have a lot of support from the staff that was forming the committee before, and particularly the folks in Dee's finance division, who do a great deal of work to keep track of all the numbers. As you can imagine, 130 projects is an awful lot to keep track of. Once we had our full list of projects, then we required a process by which we would try to rank them. And we were working fairly quickly on this, so we devised what we called a series of passes, where we made multiple passes through the entire list, picking out projects, additional projects with each pass based on certain set of priorities. So these were the passes that we used. The first pass, we looked for projects that were significantly underway or that had the bulk of their money coming from external partners. So those were fairly easy ones to continue with and to pass on to the proposed budget. The second pass then looked for any projects that weren't in Pass 1 that were specific to the priorities we had for the budget year. So rail reliability issues, safety priority items, and the PMLR startup. So those items made it into the second pass. We made a third pass through looking specifically for what we called high priority maintenance items. These were the items that we considered to be essential, both in support of rail reliability, but also just keeping us in a good state of good repair overall in the system. And then finally, Pass 4 was any other items that we could afford to do given the overall priorities we had. Things such as the bus purchases, the inventory in stores, and useful life replacements were all included in that pass. The results of our work then, I show here both the current year, fiscal year 15. We have an overall capital plan budget of $128.9 million. Just parenthetically there for comparison, I show the size of the PMLR budget, which is in a separate light rail account. But again, it gives you some sense toward some of what Dr. Bethel was asking about, the relative sizing of these programs. As we look ahead into the proposed budget for fiscal year 16, we see that the capital plan budget has increased to 136.8. Now, I will point out that that is made up of a couple different components. By the way, our accounting department tracks various kinds of expenditures. There's $122 million in that number that is pure capital. There's also some additional operating money and materials and supplies money that just has to do with how long the asset will be in place. But overall, the program, the capital program we're managing, which draws all three of those components together, is 136.8. And again, I parenthetically show the size of the PMLR budget. You can see from 15 to 16, it's gone down considerably. And in fact, the bulk of that money in 16 is financing costs, as we are now in the fiscal year 16 going to open the project and wrap up activities for the federal grant. So next I'd like to run through the projects that are included. Of course, as I mentioned before, some did not get selected, some were pushed into future years, but we are tracking the overall program in 8 separate categories, so I'll just give you the amounts and some of the highlights for each one of those categories. So starting with system expansion, that's a very small category this year. There's only one project in there that we'll be looking at, and that's some planning and design work in support of extending the red line out to Hillsborough Fairplex, farther than it currently terminates at Beaverton Transit Center. So that would provide some additional service onto the west side and requires some infrastructure changes in the track and the signals to support that. So we'll be starting that project this year, but the significant expenditures would be in subsequent years should we decide to proceed.
So is that project be able to turn the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. That's your next.
Is this to be able to turn the train around? And
Yeah.
back? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So, how far is that to the Fairplex station?
I don't know the miles.
Ballpark.
We're 5 more stations about.
About, so it's probably 2 to 2.5 miles, something like that.
Okay. And this is just a study?
Well, this would be
Or
the initial evaluation,
Okay.
the preliminary design and engineering.
So is the Fairplex on the north side of Hillsborough?
Yes.
North and east, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I'm leading to the next, the South Hillsborough plan with like 20,000 people projected to live in there.
This is quite a ways away from that, Director. So
Right.
that's one of the issues we'll talk about in the
Okay.
future, I'm sure, is how to connect jobs in South Hillsborough with
I just want
our
to put you
light
on the
rail
spot,
and the
Chairman.
employment areas further north of that. So
Right.
good
Okay.
question, darn good question.
The second category is the safety and security category. Here we have just over $11 million proposed for fiscal 16. And I would say, by the way, that the numbers that are represented up here are just in fiscal 16. Now, as this is part of a 5-year project, there's additional expenditures out in the future years, but we're just looking at the slice that's included in the proposed budget. So $11 million in fiscal 16. I think the General Manager already mentioned many of these items in his presentation. Positive train control for West, rail pedestrian safety enhancements. We're also going to do some hardening of our rail yards and some improvements at Willow Creek, among other things. Our third category is in the category of infrastructure. They're all different things within this. Many of these items, as you see here, are all about rail reliability. There's all kinds of work in all the systems, the overhead electrical system, the signal system, the track, the switches. We have money to turn some of our manual switches into power-operated switches, and to add some winter weather reliability aspects. So again, to give us a better chance to keep the system running when the weather gets really foul. A fourth category is in the category of facilities, 17.3 million, just under. We are making renovations to the trolley barn, item you've approved at a recent board meeting. There's East Portland access to employment, elevator end-of-life replacement, the Blue Line station rehabilitation, and then just general maintenance on all of our facilities throughout the system. The fifth category is fleet, just under 50 million. This is the largest one, and as the General Manager mentioned, this is replacement of buses, 77 new buses, both for replacement of old buses and allowing for expansion of our service. Also, lift vehicle replacements are included in this category. Sixth category is in equipment. This is a fairly small category. It's mostly equipment in support of training and maintenance, just general shop equipment.
Yeah. Since Director Stovall is not here, I speak out for Gresham. What's the East Portland access to employment?
It's an externally funded program. I can't, off the top of my head, give you all the details of that one. About $2.5 million for that item.
Is it more bus service? Is that?
No, this would be capital work. So I'm sure it has to do with getting people to the bus stops.
Okay.
It's bus stops, sidewalks, safe crossings.
Oh, that like 122nd,
Those,
we're trying
yeah,
to do that.
right, in
Okay.
East Portland particularly.
Okay. And I'll put my green hat on. What happens to gently used buses?
I'm going to ask for help on that one.
They're sold for scrap. Salvage value is very small once they reach their completed life. We're running buses about 16 years. So whether that changes in the future or not, I don't know. But right now, they're at the end of their useful life. They're really worth very little.
Even the parts?
We do
I
the best
would-
we
I'm just thinking
can.
there's
I would-
a bus system across the country that uses the same.
So Sam is here, but Sam Moore, but I would tell you that our mechanics are very good at pilfering those chassis for anything that has value, and they go back into our stores unit.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, thank you.
Okay, category 7 is in the information technology. Again, a very large category here, 43 point just under 7. The big driver in there is the e-fare and the real-time GPS location for LRVs and fixed route dispatch. Those 3 items are the vast majority of it. There's also the vehicle and network CCTV upgrades that the General Manager mentioned are included in this category. And then beyond that, there's all of the hardware, the desktop and server hardware that the agency requires. Finally, our 8th category is planning for future programs, just under $5 million for this one. PAL Division Corridor, the BRT that we're looking at, will be hopefully advancing the project development phase, subject to FTA approval in fiscal 16. And then we're going to do some planning work through the Steel Bridge and Rose Quarter areas, looking for ways to improve our throughput on that. That's a bottleneck for us. So we want to look at that, and that may be able to tee up some core capacity funding, federal core capacity funding, should the project qualify for that. So we're going to spend some time this year looking at those options. So that's the highlights of the 8 categories. Just looking ahead, we intend to continue to review these projects on an ongoing basis. So the committee will look at the actual performance of the projects over the course of the year to make sure that we're meeting our schedule, budget, quality, safety, DBE objectives. We'll also be considering any new projects that come along. And because we have a fixed level of funding, a new project being approved is going to have to come at the expense of a project already on the list. So again, that executive level committee is in the best position to be able to make those priority choices. We also want to develop some more refined procedures for estimating the new projects as they come in so that we can truly look at the full life cycle costing. We've done that at a fairly general level, but we want to bring in some additional discipline on that. And then we also want to look at more refined systems for prioritizing. Again, for the first year of the new committee this year, we used that 4-pass program, but there are other more precise ways of doing it where you have some sort of a scoring system and you consider all the agency priorities and try to rank projects that way. So we're going to be examining all those things going forward. And I'll finish by saying the committee intends to be active. It's not only going to be at budget time, it's going to meet throughout the year so that we can continue this kind of work. And with that, I'll offer to answer any questions.
Yeah, do we have somebody inside the agency who keeps track of the next second and third generation of technology?
Oh, yes.
You know, what's happening in, say, South Africa? You know, and are we planning for that? Like I mentioned in the last meeting, you know, the extra pipe in the ground, or you know.
Yes,
Which is hard to do, but I know. But
well, out of each discipline, we are, you know, pretty active in the industry, learning what others are doing and learning from it, and bringing that into our considerations. And then I know that our IT staff is constantly on top of the many changes that come extremely fast in their world, faster than for the rest of us.
Okay. And to me, and I'll follow up what Dr. Bethel said, is that it looks like on the information technology budget, looks like there's even maybe more opportunities, I hope, for MWESB's firms to, how do you say it politely?
Opportunity.
Yeah. Opportunity. I was going to say a piece of the pie, but that's probably not a piece. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Comments, questions from you, Dr. Bethel?
No, not at this point.
I guess my only comments and questions would be, this is an aggressive, good-sized capital program that you folks have got here to get proposed here. And being in your positions earlier on, oftentimes the appetite of the organization in terms of what it thinks it can actually get out the door is larger than their actual ability to deliver. So I guess the question is, you guys have taken a hard look at the resources and the timing of these, and these are good estimation of what will actually get out the door in the next fiscal year's budget?
Yes, we have done our best to schedule all this work. Of course, there's always surprises. Things like permitting can get in the way. Resource-wise, we're in very good shape because we have a lot of extremely good talent coming off of the PMLR project over the coming fiscal year. They'll be taking up many of the projects on this list.
Mr. Board President, I might just add to that one of the reasons why I wanted to see the capital program reformatted, as Dan explained, and I think Dee had the same impression, is that we've been the dilemma that you described has been very much the case in TriMet, which is we program improvement projects, but we're really challenged at delivering them. And so one of the things I wanted to do is to make sure that the executives throughout the agency are committed to this program, put the resources into delivering this program, and are involved in collaboration as necessary to deliver the program. So I think this ongoing participation at this higher level in the organization, I think, will help improve that delivery as well. But again, I think as Dan noted, I think number one, a lot of this is often people power to actually advance these projects. And one of my past roles in the capital projects world demonstrated to me that sometimes these smaller projects are as hard to deliver as the big ones, and often take a disproportionate amount of staff time and community involvement and other activities in order to deliver them. And so we simply need to step up to that to make sure that these priorities are met, because they really do have a lot to do with the quality of the service we offer to our customers.
So, thank you, and it's the response I wanted to hear. And I think the other thing I was pleased is that you're actually doing some of these projects in phases, actually understanding what's going on. And so that relates to my last question, is it possible, I suspect you probably have a spreadsheet that shows these projects arrayed over the next 3 to 5 years. If you have that, it'd be just great for I think the board to understand what's coming in fiscal year 17, 18, 19 in relation to these. And that would just help us get our mindset around the overall investments in some of these programs.
Okay, we can share that.
Thank you.
And if, when you're looking at the future programs on the steel bridge, doing the surveying, somewhere on the top, I lost a pair of pliers when I was working on there. If you find them, you got my name, my initials are carved into the steel.
We'll keep an eye out for
Etched.
them.
I do have one other thing I want to mention, and just kind of I want to thank the staff for getting to us. And I hope the board had a chance to look at that, the information on the Jobs Access reverse commute shuttle systems that are around the metro region. I think, at our last board meeting in Washington County, we heard a lot from citizens and cities about the need for continuing those. And I just point out what I saw is that most of those, the money to adequately fund those programs, if I'm reading it correct, for almost every one of them, expires after this next fiscal year, 16. Right. So it's, in fiscal year 17, there's partial funding for those 4 systems. And so if there's anything, I think that's one of the areas where we probably need to invest in a priority in the future, because of the desires and the needs, and frankly, getting folks to our major core bus and transit light rail lines. So I'm looking forward to a robust discussion of that, maybe during next year's and the next budget, because I think if we don't figure out a way to help fund those and get that going, we're going to hear a lot from a lot of folks.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I know our planning staff are engaged with all of our constituents on that, and again, some of the discussions in Salem about a transportation package would also influence how we move in that direction. But again, just to note, Mr. Board President, we're good through this fiscal year. Through fiscal year 16, we're good. It's really after that we begin to hit the cliff on these various programs. So we need to find new solutions.
Do we have a number of the estimated new jobs which will occur at Nike once they get it all built out? The big project.
I'm sure the answer is yes, but not in my head. Tom Mills, who does our coordination in Washington County, I'm sure is in touch with Nike on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dee, did we miss anything?
No, no, not yet.
Okay, good.
No. More to come.
Thanks.
Well, thank you. And again, this is just the start of our consideration of the budget, and we'll look forward to the comments that we receive from the board members and our advisory committees and the public as we bring this in for a landing. To change gears a little bit, and this responds pretty directly to Director Esmond's question about what are we thinking about in terms of technology in the future. And I'm really pleased to have Tim McHugh here, who's our Chief Information Officer, Chief Technology Officer, to begin to actually review a certain category of activities that we put under the category of smart cities. And it is how do we begin to deploy technology, not only to help our customers in our service, but to make the city a more responsive and higher quality place to begin with. So with that, with no further ado, I introduce Tim McHugh.
Good morning. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about smart cities. and a little bit about what we're doing behind it and what the term means. And I won't try not to get too technical, but I do want to take a little bit of a close look at some of the technology that's involved, so you get a better idea maybe behind what's involved in some of the decisions we make when we are looking at some of these technology initiatives. Get the right button here. There it is. So what exactly is a smart city? The definition's a little bit fuzzy, but most agree that it has something to do with efficiency and effectiveness through the use of technology in order to get society to basically a better place of being. But specifically, what does it mean? And more importantly, how do we get there? Most suggest that the answer lies in crossing boundaries, in collaboration and intelligent sharing of resources. Last year, marketing research firm of Frost & Sullivan defined 8 different aspects of smart cities. And they deem a city smart if you reached 5 of these. They involved governance, education, healthcare, buildings, mobility, infrastructure, technology, energy, and citizens. Now, technology is a fundamental factor that goes across all of these, and it's not enough to just have technology in the area. The technology needs to be connected. And to give you an example of that, a building can have a light sensor for efficient lighting. It can have a motion sensor for a security system, and it can have a CCTV camera system overwatching everything. A smart building would use a sensor to turn on the lights, sound the alarm, and initiate the recording all at once. So 3 disparate systems contributing, complementing each other in order to bring about a better good or a better product. As you're aware, and as you saw in the capital budgeting process, TriMet's been involved in infrastructure and mobility projects for the region to make the region smarter for decades. That's been our one of our key roles as an agency. But what is our role in the larger context, and specifically with regards to technology? Are we doing our part to cross over and meet the smart city challenges? So to give you some context in that, let me step back a little bit about some of the past work that we've done prior to most of you joining the board here, and then what we're pursuing in the future. So back in 2005, TriMet adopted an open data policy and releasing our schedules to the public. We were the first transit agency in the nation to do that, and this was at a time when this was considered somewhat controversial before some of the open government initiatives came about. This led to a partnership with Google, resulting in a worldwide data standard called the Google General Transit Feed Spec, or GTFS. And then TriMet being the first agency featured in Google's Google Transit offering later that year. We then began publishing real-time data in the form of web application programming interfaces, or APIs. This led to Google Real-Time and many of the third-party apps you see there that our customers enjoy today. We also introduced the first truly intermodal trip planner as an open source application. So other than to pat ourselves on the back about that, what does that mean for smart cities? It really gave riders tools that truly brought the level of accessibility of transit to a higher level. You see transit directions right alongside car directions now worldwide within Google Maps. It's easier to plan a transit trip than it is a car trip, all because of the open data effort. Clearly, we've made great strides in mobility, in smart mobility, but there's more significance to that. So the International Standards Organization recently put out a preliminary report on smart cities. Very recently, this was towards the end of last year. By far the most predominantly discussed item was the importance of data. They go so far as to call it the lifeblood of a smart city. The open data, geographic data, aggregating data from disparate data sources, and what they call service-oriented architectures, also known as APIs. Now, to demystify, that's kind of a technical term, API. Think of it just simply as a published description of how you can electronically interact with a system. So that gives you the ability to take disparate systems, tie them together, and make things work, similar to the motion sensor example I was giving earlier. Now, the standards report also goes on to state that this open data business model represents a significant challenge for government. Well, we're a decade into this model. we have a significant leg up on this challenge already. So let's look at a few of the projects that we're looking into. This one you may have heard of recently. This was just announced on Monday. But in addition to data, one of the other key aspects of this obviously is to have what they call instrumentation. A lot of electronic devices scattered about the city to provide data and interact with the data. Bluetooth low energy beacons are such a device, and thanks to Google, they are now installed on every single one of our Macs and West platforms. Now, Google initially with this intends to use this to enhance the customer experience through their Google Maps offering. But there's much more potential for these in the future. They kind of serve as little anchors to identify our stops to smartphones and other devices that may be nearby and in range to detect them. Eventually, we'll take this information about these beacons and put them in our open data, and from there, opening up the door for lots of different possibilities for using them. So Neil recently asked us to look more closely into how TriMet can participate more directly in the sharing community. How can we tie transit together with bike share, car share in a meaningful way? Now recently, a few of these services have begun themselves to offer up open APIs to their services in the same manner that we did. We're currently working with them to redefine, we're actually collaborating directly with them to redefine what open data means in the private competitive sector and how it relates to the public transit and business. The ultimate goal is that we would want to provide a seamless trip, completely for one trip, have a bike share to bus to car share. It's kind of a very real possibility for how to solve the last mile problem that we all know. Now to do this, we're looking at a developer series. Last year we embarked on a 3-part third-party developer series where the first 2 sessions have been held, and they focus primarily on the improved data that came out of our CAD-EVL system and how they can make use of it for customers. So we're looking at focusing the third in this series on how to fold in the share services into that as well. And the end goal of this would be trying to get a data standard similar to what we did with GTFS, all about how to involve sharing modes together, and this being done through third-party developer participation to develop that. One of the really exciting projects that we're working on is with Intel. We're exploring with Intel and a few of their other collaborating partners on how to improve rail reliability. We all know how debilitating it is to have one vehicle fail the entire system when it breaks down in service. So working with the rail equipment maintenance and the IT department, Intel is designing a system to tie together a lot of disparate sensors. And bear in mind, there are 30-year-old vehicles here, so the technology varies from the oldest to the newest fleet. And what we would like to do is tie those sensors together, communicate them wirelessly back to the maintenance and rail control personnel in real time. So kind of think of it as OnStar for rail vehicles. The goal would be to detect impending failures early with warning signs, accurately diagnose what's going on remotely, and then more quickly respond to failures as they happen. Or more importantly, to perform advanced analysis to prevent the futures in service in the future. So in the smart cities vernacular, this is what's known as the Internet of Things application, taking many disparate devices, communicating the information, and tying them back together for a purpose greater than the individual. Your electronic fare, you're familiar with this project. I mention it here because one of the other points of emphasis in the ISO report was that governmental bodies need to depart from the way that they do their traditional IT backend infrastructure procurements in order to develop this service-oriented architecture, as they refer to it. We need to develop, agencies need to adopt a vendor-neutral open architecture for other parties to plug into. And the architecture needs, as the architecture of the needs evolve. So this is consistent with our decision for the e-fare system in that we are approaching it with an open architecture with open APIs. And to illustrate what's important about this approach. While the eFare system doesn't involve paying for a bike share program directly from the eFare card, the system is architected so that if we should change our mind about that in the future, we could plug in any of the bike share groups directly into the system and include that as a part of it without the involvement of our current vendor. So while it would take a little bit of work to do something like that, it's set up so that we can do it on our own without reprocuring the entire system or changing significantly. The Global Cities Team Challenge, that's always a tongue twister for me, it's a program put out by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, along with US Ignite, to try to promote the development of Internet of Things and smart city development. TriMet's part of a Portland entry into this program, partnering with PSU, City of Portland, Intel, DEQ, and the IBI group to study the Powell-Clinton division areas. So this area is kind of unique in that it has a compilation of very diverse but very closely knit street profiles. Powell being the transit and travel corridor, Clinton being the bike corridor, and Division representing a rather population booming area. So the housing is dramatically increasing there. Using the instrumentation that's already in place and other resources of the partners involved in this project, we can do things like study the effect of traffic signal prioritization on traffic flow and the resulting impact on pollution, be it positive or negative. We can combine this with travel patterns and other demographic data, both now and then in the future as we implement the BRT system, so that we can have a really significant before and after impact study. And lastly, OpenStreetMap, or OSM. OpenStreetMap's a worldwide seamless base map owned by the public. You can think of it as the Wikipedia of maps. The data is crowdsourced, meaning that individuals in the public can contribute to improving the data on a daily basis. Kind of think of it as a Thomas guidebook where your neighbors and other fellow travelers are constantly updating it every day. In the Portland area, it's more accurate than Google Maps or some of the other more costly proprietary solutions. TriMet led this effort to bring OSM to this level of accuracy. And we're the first governmental agency in the US to adopt OpenStreetMap and commit continued development resources to it so that the map can change with the city as things change and as new elements that we want to track, such as paths and walkways and bike paths. So the upkeep from TriMet augments the efforts of the community at large in the other seven jurisdictions in the 7-county area. Now we use this in support of our actual operations, our system operations, and we do this at significant cost savings. We don't have to license the other proprietary solutions that frankly, that was in our plans initially, and that's a savings of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's a superior product. So the OpenStreetMap initiative represents kind of the ultimate in the data sharing, in that we're not just giving data out for somebody else to use. It's kind of shared from its inception. So from birth to well, it doesn't die. On into perpetuity, the data is continually improved and it's shared amongst all the resources. And since GIS data is kind of a underpinning of a lot of the smart city information that you need, Portland has one of the most accurate map bases to work off of and yielding a superior product in everything that we do. So while all these initiatives that I just mentioned aren't going to land us in a smart city immediately when they're done, I do think it is our best foot forward for it. I think it sets an example for advancing the projects in an intelligent, collaborative, and open way. And I believe that the smart choices involved in the projects that we're doing will push us forward towards getting to this better state of being. And one of them being this beautiful view of the bridge. So with that, I know that was a lot to absorb. I'll take any questions.
Questions, thoughts from the report.
Yeah, are we working with the smart grid group based up at PSU at all? Are you aware of them?
There's a lot of activity at PSU, and there are various groups within TriMet who are
Working with them?
working them very
Yeah.
closely. The PSU portal that they have there is pouring a lot of data resources in there. And honestly, it's the key to this is not necessarily to focus on one aspect or another. It's to take what's going on with that and how does that impact something else that we're doing in another
Right,
area.
Right, okay. I mean, I'm sort of involved in sponsoring some stuff there, my organization, where you take the smart house idea and then you make it just for the whole grid. So
Exactly.
if you own a factory over in, say, Boardman, you can shut down at night maybe, or reduce the thermostat, sell the power back to the grid. And I don't know if we ever thought about doing that with our power. And I'm no expert at all, so, but I do know about electrons.
So we do have actually a number of different initiatives, which frankly go over my head in terms of trying to explain. But amongst them are capacitors that we have now are both on vehicles in some cases or at substations that actually absorb the electricity from the braking of the light rail cars and then allow that to be discharged to the wire when the vehicle calls it. My sense is that we probably don't have a lot of long-term storage, and it probably isn't a very fruitful environment because we really are, we turn it on when the vehicles are using it, and it's pretty self-regulatory, regulated in that way.
I must admit, I've never heard of the open street map. That was an interesting concept. Is this something that's being looked at all over the world?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting applications for it. One of them being how to respond to disasters, because when the map changes radically when you have an earthquake or something. So in order to remotely respond, to crowdsource, to get everybody involved, to say, hey, this is out, this is how you get to the nearest hospital, this is how, there's lots of applications for that, which just can't be met by producing a map and deploying it. It's more the other way around now.
So it seems like there'd be some tension. We have these nice partnerships with Google, but then we've got to go into the open street. I mean, is there some tension there that's created by this, or is this a?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think
I see.
it's really. I think there might be some tension with people who are their sole business is the Thomas Guides of the world, who want
Gotcha.
their businesses to deploy that, and this could kind of take that business away. But Google would probably welcome it. And they layer their services on top of it.
Interesting.
Now, do we get notification if there's a fire at 18th and Division and the street's shut, basically? Is that going on? Is that all tied in on paper?
I mean, right now there's a lot of radio traffic in order to communicate all of the emergency. We're patched in through our radio systems with the city, so we do have a lot of the same information flowing through our control center. But in terms of an automated sense,
Right.
I
Just
think
boom, say sensors. Not a sensor,
that's where we need it to go. I mean, that's what this is kind of all about. Is there's lots of different things that ODOT's putting in, that we're putting in.
Yeah.
If we can tap into them and cross over, we can really improve the way we route the service.
Same as the police, same idea. Okay. All right. It makes sense.
I might note that this, just the innovation with Intel, I think, has a lot of potential legs for us, and I know have been really very enthusiastically embraced by our rail vehicle maintenance staff as a way to sort of get the intelligence about what's going on with the vehicle back to the people who can actually interpret it the best and then have a quick response. I might note that's the Internet of Things approach, and my suspicion is where we're going is not only rail vehicles, but ultimately buses will all have that same sort of communication technology so that we can, and of course then what happens with that is reams and reams and reams of data come back through a system that need to be interpreted and mined so that we begin to understand what the trouble signs are ahead and adjust our maintenance efforts according to that. So there's a great potential for increased efficiency in terms of our maintenance effort if we can really harness these new technologies as we come. Tim and his staff, I think, have been leaders in the industry in this regard, and I think also are, like related later, everybody's chasing to sort of keep up with this, but also to begin to see the opportunities some of these new technologies have. So again, congratulations to Tim and his staff for the great work they've been doing in this regard.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. General Manager?
Nothing more from me.
Okay. Anything else from the board? I guess any thoughts on the budget priorities or issues that we've missed other than what we've already talked about? Okay, good. I think we'll declare this briefing complete. Thank you very much to you and the staff for putting this together. This was very informative, and we'll look forward to hearing from our partners out and stakeholders as they start reviewing the budget.
Great.
Thank you. We're done.